Welcome back to the Diaries of a Witch podcast. My name is Angelica Crashi, and I am your host of this podcast. If you are listening for the first time, welcome, welcome. If you are a weekly listener or you often tune in, thanks for coming back. And today we are going to be talking about restorative magic. So there are many different things that you could need some type of restoration from, right? And that's sort of up to you to decide what that is. I think for a lot of people this time of year, it could be like you're just generally feeling kind of under the weather. You might be feeling burnt out. You might be feeling like you're just kind of in a funk. This might happen at other times in the year. It's not necessarily directly tied to the week that I'm filming this. However, the week that I'm filming this, there are lots of things going on that could cause stress, I think, that could exacerbate stress. Like we have the TikTok stuff, we have I can't even say it. You know what I'm trying to say. The inauguration. And obviously the horrible, tragic LA wildfires. And there's just, there's always stuff happening, right? But I just have found myself this week feeling really sad and being really in need of restoration myself, as well as, seeing this with so many people that are affected by the wildfires. And, I don't know. I don't have to sit here and tell you that it's sad or that it's affecting me, because I'm sure that you feel the same way. But I think that there's a reason why I wanted to do this podcast episode this week, because I've been feeling really in need of restorative magic. And that's something that I really like to do whenever I'm feeling something kind of in real time in my magical practice, or I'll reflect on what I've done in the last couple months or years around a topic in my magical practice. And those are the types of things that I like to talk about on this podcast in particular, because, these are things that are straight from my diaries, right? The diaries of a witch. They're straight from my experience, my magical journals, the things that I've done, the things that have worked for me. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Restorative magic, different types of things that you can try. And I hope that this brings you a little bit of peace at this time. And I think it brings up the intro to this idea, which is when should we do magic? Which is a big question that I don't know if I can answer right now. I don't know if anybody can answer that for you. I think that that's something that you need to feel within yourself at any given moment on any given day. When is the time in the place in your practice, in your schedule for magic to come in? But what I kind of mean is, when should I call upon magic as a tool? I think the easiest way to look at this idea, because I hear from so many clients, so many students, so many followers, listeners, what happens when I know I should probably be doing magic around something, but I just don't want to. And this could be because you're feeling really low energy or drained or burnt out or upset. This could be for another reason, but specifically when you're feeling it, when you're just overwhelmed, there's a lot going on, and you know that magic could potentially help you in the situation, you're a witch, you know that magic and ritual and all of deity work, everything that it is that you do in your practice could be helpful, but it just takes a lot it takes the extra energy that you already don't have to try to engage in that, right? What do you do? How do you navigate that? So I think first of all, it's helpful to understand that there is such a thing as restorative magic, right? Magic does not have to be here I am setting up my ritual circle on the floor for 7 hours, waiting for the planetary hour. That is something that you can do in a magical practice, right? But that doesn't need to be your every day, every week, every month, every season ritual. That doesn't have to be something that you do and that's the only thing that you do, right? I do know magical practitioners who almost every ritual they do, at least as far as I know, I don't, some of these people are people I know personally, some of these people are people I don't know personally, but I do know magical practitioners who really like elaborate ritual, and that's their thing, and that's what they gravitate towards, right? I like an elaborate ritual every once in a while. However, and maybe it's like my Italian folk roots or something, but I genuinely find that the majority of like day-to-day things that I need to call upon my spell work practice, my thaumaturgical magical practice for, can be accomplished through simple, quick, easy spell work, a lot of like folk type spell work, petitions with deities. And so it's really only every couple of weeks or months when I have a very specific goal that I'm trying to accomplish that I will engage in a more strategic, elaborate ritual, right? And I've talked a little bit before about like when to employ those types of rituals, when not to. And the general advice that I always give about this is like, if this is something, if the spell that you're trying to cast is something that is going to be really difficult to manifest naturally into your life just through your actions, then it's something that could potentially be a candidate for an elaborate ritual where you're raising a lot of energy, right? The more energy you raise for something, the more you're feeding it, right? So if you find something in your life that does not have a lot of energy, it needs help, it is nowhere near to being born, and it needs a lot of sustenance in order to be birthed into the world, that might be something where you do more elaborate rituals, you do more often rituals for, whatever it is, right? I think when it comes to our health and well-being and mental health, right? And it really depends on like what your normal like basis is. I don't even like using the word normal, but like what the general consensus is for you. If you find that you are always in this state of burnout and frustration, there might need to be a little bit more attention paid to the overall self-care using magic that it is that you're doing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like do an elaborate ritual around this. You could, but it just means like, okay, well, this is something that you're struggling with in your day-to-day life. And so it's something that could benefit from more magical action, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to say. I'm using that idea of like the theory of one of the theories of like when to employ certain magical skills, right? To the idea of like restorative magic. From a different perspective, I think that if you know that magic helps you, if you know that talking to your deities is something that invigorates you and makes you feel better, then it should be something that you can consider as a part of your toolkit. Right? It doesn't have to be the first thing. You don't have to shame yourself into doing it. Like, oh, I'm a witch, I should choose magic to get out of this situation, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something that if you don't do it, you're now upset with yourself, right? I think that that's totally counterintuitive to the situation. But it can be something that you call upon. However, it's really helpful to have systems set up in advance in order to support you during these times. So the first thing that I would really recommend doing for restorative magic is to know in advance what helps you, what is actually in your toolkit that you can call upon at any given time when you need it. For me, I really like ritual bathing. That is like one of my favorite things. Whenever I am wanting to do something magical, and regardless of whether or not I'm low energy or high energy, it usually always starts with some type of ritual bath. I love ritual bathing. It's like one of my favorite things. And one of the reasons why I like it so much is it feels really relaxing, and it can help me get into kind of like gnosis through this really relaxing, restorative, receptive way, right? I love ritual bathing. So that is something that I know how to do in advance, right? Like I have a whole system around this. I have, lots of bath ingredients at any given time to be able to draw myself a really cool ritual bath. I have magical soaps. I have like the whole shower bath routine. I used to work at Lush, so I have like the whole bathing routine, right? I have like bath salts that I've made that have different enchantments. all sorts of stuff, right? So I have like restorative bath salts, right? That and herbs that I utilize, like cleansing herbs that I utilize whenever I'm like, okay, my energy is feeling really weird right now. I need to do something about that, right? So I immediately hop into a ritual bath. Think to yourself, what are things that always make you feel better, like magical things that make you feel better, that you actually really want to do, like things that you're like, oh my gosh, I like am so excited to be able to do this, or it's so restorative naturally to be able to do this. And then think about things in your mundane life that also do that for you, because you can enchant those things as well. That's my second tip, is finding out and kind of going through the things that are in your restorative toolkit that might not be related to magical acts and enchanting those things. So for example, I was just talking to my patrons about this. I love video games. I love them. They're so fun. I love like cozy games. I haven't been playing a lot of video games lately. And I was talking to my patrons in our live stream about like the inner child, and we're getting like inner child messages, and we're all talking about what we do to connect with our inner child. And I was like, oh, I love gaming for my inner child. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And then I realized like, oh, I have not been doing that lately. Like I have not played a video game. I was playing like Pokemon Scarlet last summer, and that was like the last game that I really played, which is so sad. I love Stardew Valley. I love Pokemon. I love The Sims. Like those are like my games, right? My shit, right? And so I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like I haven't done that recently. And I decided like, okay, I'm going to start a like intentional gaming routine. And I've done this before, but I'm like, I'm going to reinstate this. And, you know, I'm going to use like video gaming as this restorative act. And you could choose to enchant this in a variety of ways. I think just the nature of resting can be seen as like a restorative magical act, right? You could choose to, like for me, I'm viewing it from the perspective of I'm working with my inner child and doing like a parts work practice with my inner child that involves video gaming. You could try to do some type of like meta sigil or like hyper sigil. That's what it's called. It's not called a meta sigil. I guess it, you know, that could be something else entirely. Or some type of like digital video game magic where like you're literally creating yourself in a character, and the things that you're doing in your video game are supposed to be manifesting in your life. You could do so many things with this, right? And so just the nature of choosing to rest and choosing to do something that you think is going to positively impact you can be a magical act, right? It can be like enchanting some type of candle and burning that when you play video games, and the whole idea for the candle is healing and play and fun and feeling good and happiness and self-love, right? I love that. I actually just got a candle from the Bruja's Tomb. Alexa, she's great. I love Alexa so much in her products. And I just got this like self-love, or love, it's called Love and Adoration, but I got it for self-love. And I'm planning on doing like a video game healing practice where I'm burning that candle while I'm crafting or playing video games or doing anything restorative. And that's kind of what I will be doing this winter. So I'm really excited to start that and talk more about that. So another thing that you can do is you can look at your natal chart, and you can take a look at what naturally you have a lot of in your natal chart and what naturally you are missing. So the easiest and I would say most common way to look for this is to check the elements. So look for your elemental voids, the elements that are not present very much in your birth chart. And then look for the elements that are very strong in your natal chart. So I have a lot of Capricorn placements, which is what makes restorative stuff kind of difficult for me anyway. But I have a lot of earth energy. I have a lot of fire. I'm mostly earth and fire. I have a little bit of air, and I have no water placements. And so when I'm talking about like elemental voids and the absence of an element, obviously we all have houses in our natal chart that are ruled by certain elements and certain signs, but I'm talking about the planets and how they're laid out in your chart. So think about like the signs of your planets and then the elements that rule those signs, right? So think about your primary placements. You could choose to bring in the outer planets if you wanted to, like Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, or you can just choose to kind of go with the personal planets, the luminaries, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, right? Those are like the traditional and the personal planets. And just look at the layout of like what signs those are in and the elements associated with them. And this might be able to give you some information on the element that is just, again, like naturally not as present in your personality and in your life. But this element can be something that you call upon when you're doing restorative magic. Not every single time whenever, if I'm sick or if I'm burnt out or whatever, it's not always because of the elemental void, but the elemental void can give me information on stuff that I can do to help myself feel better, especially when I feel out of balance, because the whole idea with the elemental void thing, and you might not have, you might have a really good balance of all the elements. You might have one element that's somewhat present, but not as present as the others. You might have a complete void like I do with water. I don't have any water planets, main water placements in my chart. So anyway, you can utilize this and work with this, and your elemental voids can be able to communicate to you about, again, like what is kind of out of balance in your chart. And the elements rule our world, our earth, our reality. So when we are embodying certain elements over other ones, over time, sometimes it can cause this feeling of like, oh, I just don't feel quite right. I just don't feel like I am fully balanced and fully, interacting with everything in the world, right? Which, maybe isn't the goal for everybody because it's a difficult thing to achieve. But for me, knowing that I have a water void, it makes so much sense that ritual bathing makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel connected to myself, connected to my emotions. It helps me process emotions. It's literally like, okay, I am all fire and earth. I'm like a volcano. Of course, water is going to help me feel better, right? Drinking water, using water in magic, that sort of thing. So for you, it might be fire. It might be, you could look at like what the elements are associated with and do things that are similar to those. So of course, water is like emotions and relationships, right? And these, I don't want to say that these are things that I struggle with because it makes me sound like a fucking psycho. And I'm not, I promise. I'm not. I'm a little I'm a Mars in Libra. I am very nice. At least I think so. I definitely try to, I feel like I'm very diplomatic, and I can really empathize with people really easily because of that placement. But anyway, I do find that sometimes I will get distracted by all of my Capricorn shit that I'm doing, and I will completely forget about my emotions, or I will forego my emotions in order to get things done or to please people or that sort of thing, which is very Mars and Libra. I will basically put myself into uncomfortable situations in order to not face emotions. And I know this, and I'm working on this with Hades and my therapist and all of my shadow work. But that's why working with water is a really great way to address this issue in my life. And knowing that I have an elemental void of water, it really does help me access that. And so whenever I'm feeling weird and I need to get rebalanced, I remember the elemental void and I go, okay, I need to drink water. I need to sit in water. I need to work with water. I need to cry. These are the things that always make me feel better. And 9 times out of 10, I feel so much better after doing one or all of those things. Something else that might be helpful is understanding what influences are creating this condition in your life. So again, this could be because of burnout. This could be because of some unexplained astro weather situation. Maybe you're feeling totally fine and then the new moon in Cancer conjunct Mars happens, which just happened a couple days ago, and you're like, what is going on? I feel terrible. It could be literally because of a very prominent like thing happening in your life, or, you know, issue that you're experiencing. But just understanding what it is that's creating this can be really helpful, because then you can literally just get to the root of that. So if you feel like there's really no reason for you to be feeling shitty or you to be feeling upset, some things that you could look at is like, okay, are all of my wards, are all of my wards in place? When have I last done a protection spell? When have I last done a cleansing on myself? Could this potentially be something like evil eye? I am somebody who does not like to fearmonger about curses, evil eye, etc., right? Whatever you call it. I am not somebody who's like, oh my god, you're hexed, that's why you feel terrible. I sometimes will have clients where there's something like that coming up in the reading, and I always tell them, like, I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm not trying to fearmonger or to make you feel like you have to, run into the bath and start cleansing yourself. However, this can happen. And if you are somebody who believes in things like evil eye, there's like the schema in your paradigm for that to affect you in some way. Sometimes we forget, even as advanced witches, we forget, oh, when is the last time I did a protection spell? Or, oh, like my ward broke 3 weeks ago and I haven't replaced it, right? Like, we just forget about these things sometimes. And sometimes that can be part of what is the problem. And so addressing those things, having regular spiritual cleansing routines, regular protection routines, having like systems in place so that if something does happen to one of your wards, or if, the third Friday of every month comes around and, that's usually when you do cleansing, you just have a system for that and you're able to address those things as they come up. I was changing around my jewelry recently because I got some new jewelry like for my birthday, and I was just like changing it around or whatnot. And I wasn't wearing certain pieces that have like magical talismanic properties. And it really made me feel so much different. I won't say like I felt worse, but I felt so different not having those pieces of jewelry that I always wear on me. And it really showed me that like there is power in when we have magical systems that we've set up and then those things get removed. So this can be what happens when we're undergoing things like evil eye or even more elaborate, magical, aggressive behavior on other people, right? It can just make us feel different. It can make us feel a little weird. It doesn't even necessarily need to be because of like a spell that somebody did. It can just be like your boss is talking shit about you, and you as a witch are feeling that mentally, physically, and emotionally. And it can be really annoying, and it just, it's not the most pleasant thing to deal with, but sometimes as a witch, we need to remember that we have to rise to the occasion when we are presented with these problems, and we have to go, okay, I do have tools that I can use to work with this, and so I'm going to choose to call upon those things. So I think having those routines in place are helpful, because then you're like, okay, cool. But also having things in place for when you need to protect yourself or when you need to cleanse. So I have like I said, with my ritual bathing routine, I have like a banishing and cleansing salt bath that I've created, like a big batch of. And so whenever I'm feeling like something is, off, I just take a bath with the bath salts. I have oils, I have banishing routines. Whenever I do like a protection spell or a banishing candle spell, I'll make a bunch of candles. So I'll take like 3 7-day candles or 5 chime candles, and I will enchant them all with the energy of either protection or banishing, so that I just literally, that's where I keep all my magical stuff. So I literally just go in my magical cabinet and I pull out a banishing candle, and I don't have to like sit here and think about it too much. I can just utilize that and wield that, right? So you could purchase items, you could make your own items. And you want to do this when you're feeling good, when you're feeling like you're at full power, so that when you're feeling kind of low energy for whatever reason, or maybe even like you're having to take action based off of another magical action that has occurred, then you know what to do. You already have the tools for it created. You don't need to worry too much about it. You can just step into action right then and there. So I love working with the sun. This is especially when I'm sick, but when I'm burnt out, it has a very similar effect. So I love the sun. I work with the sun a lot in my glamour magic practice. So I have a lot of like solar curio. I have like solar fluid condensers, oils. I have a lot of things that I just use in my glamour magic practice in relation to the sun. I made like a big solar fluid condenser for the summer solstice. I do this every year. We did it with the Coven and with Rule the Room last year, which was really fun. We like all did a big solar magic fluid condenser ritual. And this is something that I, make a big batch of every year, and I use it throughout the year. So a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling sick. It was like right before my birthday. I had kind of a cold, but I wasn't like super symptomatic. I just had like a headache, and I was like sneezing and coughing, and I was like, oh, I'm getting sick, right? And so I took a bath in the solar fluid condenser, and I applied it to my skin every single day, and I took my zinc, and I did all my other things to make myself feel better. And literally within 2 days, my symptoms had not gotten worse, and they had almost completely stopped. And so then I stopped doing the solar fluid condenser, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not sick. And then it came back, and then I felt sick again, and I was like, oh my God, no. And so I did the fluid condenser stuff. I applied the solar condenser to my skin, and I, did some meditations in the sun and evoked the sun, not like in a really intense ritual, just did some prayers for the sun and Orphicum to Helios. And, I worked with the sun in the way that I usually do. And again, although these are fairly low energy, doing some breath work with the sun, 10 minutes, solar fluid condenser, it takes 30 seconds to anoint yourself with that. Saying the Orphicum to Helios takes, a minute, right? So these things don't take a long time, and they're pretty low energy. And then I felt better again, and I was totally fine after that. And I repeated that for a couple of days to make sure that I was really getting the root of the sickness. But, I'm not trying to say that I can cure ailments with with magic overall, but I did happen to cure myself of whatever cold I had using solar magic recently. So it is something that I would recommend to try. And it might not work in every situation, but it's something that you can use when you're burnt out, when you need support. Because what does the sun do? It warms us, it supports us, it creates vitality. So literally whenever I need more energy and I'm feeling really low energy, my first magical thing that I do is, I need to work with the sun. And I have a general solar practice, like I said, because I feel like it really helps me in all areas of my magic. But whenever I am feeling kind of shitty, I always ask myself, when's the last time you did solar breath work? Or when's the last time you anointed yourself with sun oil? And it's usually been a long time. So especially during the winter, supplementing with the sun can really help. And it can really help with feelings of seasonal, depression, or just feeling kind of down and out. It's a really great idea this time of year to supplement with the sun, whether that be taking vitamin D, going for walks, literally doing it in terms of the physiology of it, as well as the magical stuff that you can do with the sun. The last thing that I recommend doing, that I always love to do whenever I'm experiencing burnout or stress, or I just need restorative magic, is working with my deities. And this doesn't have to be, like I said, a big elaborate ritual that takes 3 hours to set up, or even 15 minutes. This can be just knowing that you have built relationships with these deities that you have worked with, and you can lean on them in this instance, right? You can go to their altar and just tell them and talk to them about what you're experiencing. You can ask them for advice. You can pull cards from them. You can petition them to assist you with whatever you're experiencing. Or you can just vent to them and talk to them about what you're experiencing and why, you might need support at this time, or what support you are requesting there's been so many times where I've like been so upset about something and my husband is like, have you talked to Hades about this? I like how my husband is like, yeah, talk to me, talk to your therapist, but the real person you need to talk to is Hades. But he knows that not only do I feel so much better after talking about it with Hades, but he knows and he's seen that whenever I do that, the situation seems to turn around because now Hades is assisting me and helping me. And, you know, sometimes people ask me like, so why do you offer to Hades all the time? Or why do you pray to him all the time? What is the point in pagan deity work of like doing regular offerings or, you know, working with them in an ongoing basis? And of course, you're not going to do this with every deity. There's deities that I work with very casually and very seasonally, and I only call upon them for certain things. But then Hades is my patron, and I have a really deep connection with him, and I am constantly keeping up the relationship. And, you know, one of the benefits of this is that you build up this thing called charis, which is basically mutual goodwill towards one another. So if I give Hades a bunch of offerings without asking for anything in return, there almost creates this system where if I do need help with something, especially quite last minute or suddenly, he's like, yeah, well, of course I'm going to help you because you've, you know, given me so much time and attention. I think the same goes for friendship. You know, obviously friendship is not about like, you do this for me, I do this for you, but there's this mutual goodwill associated with friendship where, you know, somebody gives you a really great birthday gift and you're like, wow, this person really understands me. You're more likely to, you know, go out of your way for that person. Or, you know, you have a friend that talks to you for, you know, 30 minutes about a problem that you're experiencing. Next time that they want to do that with you, you're more likely to, you know, be receptive towards that or to want to help them and give them counsel because they've done that for you. So this can be the same thing with deity work. If you don't do a lot of deity work, this might not be something that you call upon, but I do still think it's helpful and I would still encourage you to think about like what spirit connections that you have, right? Do you have, you know, everybody has spirit guides that want to help and assist them. So even if you don't know who your guides are, ask your guides for help. Call upon your guides. Say, guides, I'm burnt out, I'm sick, I'm feeling shitty, etc. Whatever is going on in my life. Mars retrograde is fucking me up. Can you please help me in some way? Or can you listen to me and give me counsel about this, right? Even if you don't know who your guides are or what their roles are, they will, I would say 9 times out of 10, be able to help you with this. You can call upon your ancestors for the same thing, especially like people that you had a close relationship with in life. You know, if you don't have an ancestral practice, don't feel like the second you get burnt out, you need to start one. You know, that might feel a little like too much work, you know what I mean? To suddenly start this ancestral practice. But I would argue that you already do have an ancestral practice, you know, with your grandmother that passed away or with a great uncle or great aunt that you were named after, right? So again, you can call upon these people when you need support. And I think no matter who you are and what your practice looks like, even if you're like just started doing witchcraft 3 days ago, you have you have something that you can contact, you know, that's not of this world or that has left this world. You know, it's undeniable how helpful that can be. So make sure that you're calling upon your support systems. It's kind of like when you are feeling shitty and you almost want to like self-isolate and you don't want to tell your friends or your family or your therapist or whatever how you're feeling. The same thing can happen in your spiritual practice. You just forget that you can talk to your deities about it, or you feel bad, or you feel like a burden or whatever. So put that all out of your brain and just remember that like these people care about you and they want to help you. And so whether it's family, friends, therapists, whatever it is, right? Whatever support systems that you have, remember that you have spiritual support systems as well, and, you know, call upon them. All right, everybody. It was so great to chat with you today. I loved this topic. If you would like to hear more about this topic, let me know, because I definitely have some extra ideas that I have not, I didn't put in this episode. Maybe I will do like a Patreon post where I elaborate on these ideas. So stay tuned for that if that ends up happening. I like to do that with my podcast episodes because I always end up having like things that I didn't say or things that I thought of during the recording that I was like, ooh, I want to say that, but I want to like write that down, or I want to like do an extra episode about that or something. So I've been doing that a lot on Patreon, like doing extended episodes or just writing blog posts and posts about the things that I didn't write about in the episode. So stay tuned for that. And if you're not already a patron, please consider joining. Support the podcast through Patreon. Support my work in general. If you like what I do, if you like the podcast project and want to see it continue, I would love, love, love to have you over on Patreon. And we have so many exclusive events and posts and things that happen all the time in Patreon. We do 2 monthly live streams. We do a special individual tarot reading live stream for the Covenantier every month. We have a Covenantier event every month. This month it is going to be a astrology workshop on Thursday the 16th, where we're talking about the astrology of 2025 and how it impacts you. We're doing our 3rd annual Lupercalia ritual next month for our Covenantier event, which is always so exciting. I'll talk more about that soon and on Instagram, but please consider joining Patreon. And speaking of my patrons, I wanted to do a shout out for all of my incredible, amazing patrons. These are the members of my diary and my Coven tier. Thank you so much to Jamie, Cheryl, Emma, Alexis, Alessandra, Ashley, Luna, Taylor, Jordan, Chelsea, Quinn, Floor, Megan, Natalie, Caitlin, Melissa, Natalie H, Jen, Carrie, Kat, Lauren, Kayla, Alethea, Lindsay, Sarah, Quinn, April, Peony, Danya, Joanna, Megan S, Megan R, Callie, Nina, Irene, Chelb, Haley, Abigail, Kristen, Desiree, BFG, Emmy, Hannah, Georgia, Adri, Liz, Kay, Esty, Kristen, Shell, Veronica, and my newest member, Ella. Thank you so much for being patrons, and thank you so much for watching. To those of you who watched or listened, find me over on Instagram at Angelica S. Krejci, and we will talk very soon. Goodbye.